Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Let's just sit quietly for a few minutes to calm our body and mind. Whatever we are resting our mind on, try to be with that object alertly, attentively, delightfully. Next, as we will do the homage recitation to the Buddha, before doing that, take time in cultivating the merit field with Buddha Shakyamuni, the space above oneself. You may also include the lineage masters from the Buddha's time to the present, all facing, all in the space. And think of what that would mean when qualities such as wisdom is at a perfection state. That means ignorance is at zero state. Likewise, it's the same case with all of the other qualities in relation to their corresponding opponents. In the case of the Buddhas, these opposing negative qualities are not only zero there, but have been completely traced out, leaving no room whatsoever for their ever coming back. Such a state of strong cessation has been reached through the powerful antidotes that he applied on the path to fully awakening. Likewise, think of the lineage masters in whatever stages they may be, some at the full state of Buddhahood, some on their very advanced stages. Think of their qualities, be that of realization or that of degrees of freedom from the afflictions and obscurations in corresponding way. And think of what those qualities mean, how they make a difference both in their lives as well as in the lives of others. And thinking along these lines, feel inspired to generate them, be delightful in having the opportunity, chance, interest that we have in cultivating them. Think of sentient beings, fellow sentient beings surrounding us, all in human forms, yet undergoing their respective predicaments, sufferings, limitations, whatever realms of existence they may be in. Making our attention particularly go to those in lower realms of existence. While at the same time think of our condition in samsara, irrespective of where we may be currently, of how bondage to the afflictions and the karmas induced by them, resulting in the sufferings. Is a condition to be avoided, to be freed from, both in terms of oneself and others. Connect with the sentient beings, with our common basic aspirations. Despite that, how we are caught up in our confusion, ignorance, afflictions, leading to unbecoming actions that in turn generate more sufferings. Very clearly and starkly reflecting how confused we are despite this rightful fundamental aspiration for happiness and not suffering. So long as this remains the status quo, this remains the situation, then there is no way to get genuine freedom. So drawing our attention on the similarity, yet our varied dispositions leading to difference in situations, nonetheless all the time connected, not only connected but even extending helping hands, both directly and indirectly, all the time. Thinking along these lines, see if we come up with a warm-heartedness going towards the sentient beings, a sense of genuine sense of care, while at the same time part of our mind is filled with sense of inspiration or gratitude towards the merit fields, generating a strong desire, inspiration to walk the path, following the footsteps of the masters, so that we could as well become like them in being fully capable of serving sentient beings in the most effective, ultimate sense. So with these cultivations, let's say the homage together.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, full destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, our prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you pay 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow, with pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom motion like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, colored like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms, unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame, a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Gururana Mandalakam Niyatayami.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. Hold the Bodhichitta aspiration in your mind. Which means molding your mind in the Bodhichitta form, aspiring to attain full awakening for the sake of all sentient beings. Seeing that other than that, there is no way we could be of the utmost and most effective benefit to all sentient beings in the true sense of the word. Of course, this aspiration doesn't exclude all other ways of helping sentient beings that they need help from. They are all included, but all the rest of them fall short of actually bringing the most effective, lasting, sensible benefit to them. Think of how this is the case. In one of the sutras, Buddha says that even Buddhas cannot cleanse or clean the defilements or the misdeeds of sentient beings, nor can they take away their sufferings with their hands, nor can they transfer their state of realizations into the mind stream of sentient beings. The only way the Buddhas at their stage of achievement as they are, that can be of most effective, ultimate, meaningful help is by showing the path that they have realized, by sharing it with the level of achievement that they are in the full awakened, perfect state of being. They are able to show the path in however way it would resonate and benefit sentient beings. by knowing the subtle conditions of the sentient beings without the slightest error. But for that to be effective, sentient beings have to be receptive at the very least and have to follow up on the instructions, teachings that they receive. Last night we talked about praises of Bodhichitta, particularly praising Bodhichitta from the aspect of how it can benefit sentient beings. Think along those lines. Try to come to terms, come to understand their meanings. Bolstering our appreciation, enthusiasm to embody Bodhicitta in the most genuine, truest sense, while we cultivate contrived levels of Bodhicitta to the best we can, and making this the motivation behind our session today and beyond. Not just session, but in between sessions as well. In just about everything we do, see if we could bring the touch of Bodhicitta for the sake of all sentient beings. That too, not just for the sake of temporary help, but more importantly, for the sake of bringing them to a state of full freedom and even full awakening, by which they could be fully freed from the sufferings, which would otherwise keep recurring. And towards that end, we have to be following up on our aspiration to become fully awakened Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, with our own practices, at our own levels of ability, understanding. Let that be the motivation for this session and for all the rest of our activities in this life and beyond. So the part that I mentioned in the motivation, that this aspiration of Bodhicitta, or this the attitude of Bodhicitta aspiring to attain full awakening for the sake of all sentient beings, and particularly when we say for the sake of all sentient beings, means for not just bringing temporary benefit, but ultimately, actually, for bringing them to a similar state of freedom and full awakening as one is aspiring to achieve. The reason why I mention this is very evident and important, in that as we move along, go about our life, we should be open to being of benefit to sentient beings, open to helping them in ways that we are capable of. At the very least, at least at the mental state, do have that openness, do have that well-wishing attitude, do have that touch of care, kindness. That's the way to begin to eventually be of physical and verbal actual benefits as well, to the extent one has the facilities. But nonetheless, at any given time, your hearts will be open. And to that extent, it will of course affect the environment for oneself and for others, as well as it will give rise to make way to other corresponding positive ways of thinking, positive ways of relating and reaching out. It will take away all kinds of constraints we would otherwise have in thinking how to relate with others, in thinking what to do, what not. So when we say let everything be touched by bodhicitta, it is so essential and so important, and it's very, very sensible. We would anyhow be doing what we do, going about our life, but if we make that shift in our attitude of who this is for, directly or indirectly, then that makes a big change in our attitude, in how we ourselves go about our life and feel while we engage in those necessary activities. But at the same time, going forward, that can make a big difference, can open the way to wonderful transformation within us. But merely doing it without any backup reasoning, without any backup understanding, will not be much benefit. One has to think clearly of how others are valuable, how others are deserving of our respect. How this thought of I am more important than others is totally baseless. Totally baseless. It just happens to be taking the center stage because of our habituation, of our obsession, of our habituation into it, not because it is naturally the way it should be. And also that will pave way for warm-heartedness towards others, openness towards others. To that extent, that will mitigate the force, the weight of self-centeredness on us. If we look carefully, self-centeredness really weighs heavy on us, and it becomes very clear when we have things going wrong, and how we additionally bring more suffering to ourselves, in our mind, in our thinking, and through that in our relating with others and whatnot. The additional worry, the additional suffering that we bring upon ourselves. Of course, self-grasping has a big hand in it, by initially or by presenting a totally mistaken picture in the first place. But then, following that, self-centeredness kind of takes the main stage in really ruining the story. So we could be doing the same thing, but with a sense and reason and kind of enthusiasm that may this be of benefit to others. And in a way, they somehow will affect others. What we do is not just something that will stay with us exclusively, but it would affect the environment, it will affect others, whatnot. But if we do that with that kind of a sense, not only it will bring about a change, a qualitative change in how you do, what you choose to do, but at the same time, the effect that they would have to others would be something that's even coming from your own aspiration as well, not just the things just happen to affect them, but with this intention behind them. So from a Buddhist perspective, the merit one accumulates from that is marvelous. It is much more manifold than what we usually do that. So we need to remember this aspiration over and over again. That's the main reason why we do these recitations. Every recitation has Bodhichitta lines in it, as well as the refuge. Okay, so then one more. Yes. Yeah, I mean, in a way, we do not need to rush through the sessions, rush through the topics. I think of allowing maybe the whole day today on Bodhichitta and the related topics, and then maybe from tomorrow we'll deal with the perfection of generosity. We will, let's see how things go. We do not have to be in a rush. So here's this quote from someone called David Michi. He's usually sometimes called the Safari Lama. He's in South Africa, and he organizes safari tours. But mainly he's a Buddhist teacher, and he very skillful teacher. He's written several books under the name of the Dalai Lama's cat. Wow. Yeah. Just recently there was one new. He brings Dharma through that, and so skillful, makes it very clear through visual happenings, through visual actions and whatnot. So this is a quote from him. When I came across this, I was kind of, wow, that really nails it. When it comes to thinking big, it is impossible to think bigger than Bodhichitta. Everything we consider good is benevolent, is included in it. And there is extra in Bodhichitta. And but then the important thing with regard to Bodhichitta, with our own endearment with this attitude, is to an extent possible at our own stage proceed in really making sense of it, and more particularly of how it is possible. This is so essential. Some time ago, I came across an article in Tricycle where they have an interview with a Zen master, poet, writer by the name of Norman Fisher. So that's in connection with the book that he has written. I don't remember the actual title of it. What was that? Things could be otherwise, something like that. So it was, pardon? Yeah, the world could be otherwise. It was here at one time, and I looked at the opening page or the cover, side cover page. I don't think he really meant what he really meant about everything concerning bodhicitta and bodhisattva practice, because the whole book was on the 6 perfections and whatnot. So he must buy into this belief that yes, this is something achievable and whatnot. But what caught my attention was something about the bodhisattva idol being. I think I could not find that piece that I copied down, and I could not find the book anymore here. But there he was commenting on how bodhisattva ideals are unrealistic, and I mean his words are very, very strong. I couldn't first, when I came across it, I couldn't believe it. How did this come from a Zen master of this acceptance, of this repetition? But then, without looking through the book, I was giving the benefit of the doubt to him, saying that he meant by that kind of a statement. He even says that the saving grace for the bodhisattva idol is that it is starkly clear that they are unrealistic. But I think I didn't really look deeper into it, into the book. I didn't get to, but I just glanced, and it has all the 6 perfections in very, very detailed way. You must really buy into the practice and the benefit of it. And of course, being a Buddhist, one would accept and acknowledge Buddha. How in the world did you become Buddha? Has to have some explanation behind it. So there shouldn't be any doubt in thinking that, in his thinking, I think, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, that becoming bodhicitta, Buddha is possible, and the way to do that is by generating bodhicitta and pursuing the bodhisattva paths. But when we deal with the bodhisattva practices, the bodhisattva way of thinking, whatnot, some only show the strength of their mind, strength of their thought, strength of their care for sentient beings, so much so that if something were to be possible, I would do this. So there would be so many of the idols which would align with such kind of a unrealistic yet very expensive and selfless altruistic thinking. So I think that's what he must be referring to, because even in the Tibetan scriptures also there are even in the case of bodhicitta, there is one. Even in the case of bodhicitta, there are 3 versions of bodhicitta, right? 3 versions or 3 mental attitudes called bodhicitta. This one is, I'll become Buddha so that I could then deliver all sentient beings from suffering. This is the most realistic among the 3 bodhicittas. One is, I will place all sentient beings first to Buddhahood, only then I will follow. That's also counted as a bodhicitta, but not as something that would be practical on the path, but only reflecting their bodhisattvas, strength of mind and their expansiveness of it, how much they care, their altruism, the extent of their altruism. And then the other one is, I will achieve full awakening together with all sentient beings. That's also reflective of an altruistic attitude. Yet at the same time, not the practical one. The practical one, the way things happen, is not by being of any agent in becoming Buddhas of the sentient beings, by either letting them first or going together with them. It's only by becoming Buddhas so that one is fully equipped in the capability and supported by all the required qualities that one could then be of genuine benefit to sentient beings. So among these three versions, this is the one always talked about, because that's the actual practical path. But the others are also reflective of the strength of their care and concern to sentient beings. If it were to be possible, I would rather have them go at first, and then I'll follow. That makes perfect sense. So I think that might be the thinking behind those. So I just wanted to share it. And he says, David Mishi says, no other motivation is more altruistic, noble, and worthwhile. And it is such a succinct statement about bodhicitta, and it's good to think about this and kind of make sense of each of the qualities that he ascribed to bodhicitta, and see how this all connects, this all matches with what bodhicitta is. But as I said earlier, bodhicitta, I mean, we have heard, just yesterday, was it yesterday or day before yesterday, when it was shared, one of the statements of His Holiness in the teachings about bodhicitta and the wisdom of understanding emptiness. The two are most essential components of the path to becoming fully awakened. But in terms of their qualities, in terms of their nature, they are different. In that bodhicitta is easy to understand, very difficult to cultivate. Oh no, yeah, it is. And whereas emptiness is the other way around, very difficult to first get a grip of. Once you have it, you don't have to worry about losing it. So making it possible, making it practical is difficult, but that's not reason for us to kind of keep away from it, because if we do so, there wouldn't be any time we would ever develop it, and thus that means we would never be able to fulfill the aspiration to benefit sentient beings. Let's move to the next one. Yeah, so the reason why it is so powerful, why it is so effective, why it is so powerful, is because, as I said earlier or yesterday, bodhicitta, when we speak of bodhicitta, we are talking of one attitude. But that attitude, it takes so much to come to that attitude, and so much is embedded in it or underlying it. That's how it becomes so precious and so precious and so powerful. So these are drawing from the teachings on how to cultivate bodhicitta. So from this we can see what does it take to generate bodhicitta the way it is meant to be, with the genuine strength of sincerity and spontaneity associated with it. A new sense of purpose with the potential to transform our thinking. So, otherwise, we would usually think of life, the purpose of life is living a good life for one's own sake. And whatever we do for others, we also always expect something in return. So ultimately, everything that we do has to serve ourselves. And that's such a limited aim. And it's like it will all end with our death. Right? And it's so limiting. And it's such a waste of energy. We do fill all of our time with being busy. Everyone people say, we're busy. Somehow we're always busy. But mostly we're busy for our own sake, for our own interest. And that's not going any far. And that's what we have been doing from a Buddhist perspective. That's what we have been doing all along. and that has never gotten us any further away from our basic condition in samsara. That's the reason why Buddha made this call. It's time to change, shift gear, rethink the purpose. So with Bodhichitta, it is so expansive a mind, it goes to all sentient beings without exception. And what it aspires to attain is Buddhahood. And that too, not for a small period of time, but for eternity since then. And what kind of a benefit it is thinking of bringing? Again, unlimited. There's so many unlimited qualities and aspects about it that the merit accrued from that could be fully understandable to be limitless as well. It's just mere common sense. That's the reason why when we speak of qualities like bodhicitta, it kind of supports the idea that yes, with this one can go on the journey to becoming fully awakened, because the mere generation of it and the action that we undertake under its direction could be seen as really expensive and a marvelous, all embracing, and thus the energy, the merit accrued from that could be as well. And that's the reason why such a journey undertaking can be possible and can get the fuel from that. So this new sense of purpose is very, very important, even if we do not think along Bodhisattva's way of thinking, or from a Buddhist perspective. If we could kind of switch gear and see that whatever I do, even including brushing teeth and whatever, eating, whatnot, they could all have a link to serving others. Because by being active, by being healthy, active and whatnot, one could be then able to benefit others in the practical senses, and thus they are indirectly connected with such a purpose if we could bring that in. And when we do that, genuinely supported by our sensibility that yes, others definitely deserve such a care, and how one is indebted from the get-go, from our very first day until we die, and from a Buddhist perspective, for all these countless times, we have been so indebted to the service of others that it is definitely reasonable to be caring of them. And likewise, there can be so many other reasons when we think of entire sentient beings, think of the environment, etc., how even the bees and whatnot, animals, contribute to our benefit and to our survival and sustenance, whatnot. So if we think about them more and more, we really think of this whole existence as as a network, intricate network of where everybody plays a role, so such a thinking doesn't have to be a naive, simplistic thinking, but rather could be supported by the reality. And if we succeed in doing that and really bringing a genuine shift in the purpose, I mean, it would be a big blow to self-centeredness. And one will be able to do things in a much more open and relaxed way of doing. Because as much as we care about ourselves, if we care about others, if we care for others and benefit them, that will come back and serve our purpose. Although that doesn't need to be the main reason behind what we do, but in reality, that's actually how is the best way to serve oneself. And that's from a Buddhist perspective, the fact that the Buddhas have become Buddhas is just that. And even in our daily life also, we can see how much we care about others, irrespective of whether we are actually able to deliver on them in a practical sense or not. But however much we genuinely care in our mind, how well off we become, how better off we become. Although that's not the main purpose behind it, but it does immediately pay back. And how holding that kind of attitude towards others, irrespective of whatever the current situation may be, it would contribute to avoiding unnecessary problems we would otherwise bring in our way of relating to others, in our way of handling situations. Because things could be tackled on a matter-of-fact basis, see things as they are, and respond with wisdom and kindness, compassion. Yeah. So even problems could be seen as they are. Doesn't need to be kind of always seen through a negative perspective. That's what we bring into the plate. That doesn't need to be. When we have this sense of caring for others and always attached others' well-being, the purpose of others' well-being, directly or indirectly, to just about anything we do, that really brings about a transformation in our thinking as well as our actions. And Bodhichitta does this in the most comprehensive way, the most far-reaching way. So Bodhichitta encapsulates many agents of transformation within one single motivation. So each one of these attitudes can be transformative on their own, but when we generate bodhicitta, it's like they are all brought together in affecting the actions that we undertake. And it brings big picture perspective rather than to the here and now. Right? Sometimes we get so narrow in thinking what is the purpose, what really matters, what not. We kind of lose out on the bigger picture, and that's how sometimes, very often, we get so narrowed down and constrained and constricted in our thinking, in our creativity, etc., etc. Bodhicitta kind of looks so far, the furthest we can think of, and then within that, it has its own eyes on the things that could be done in between, but not exclusive of the furthest aim, rather inclusive of all of these. And this can really make a difference in how we go about our life and planning things that we have to do. It's an emphasis on inner process than rearranging our external world. That's crucial to think. Because all of these cultivations that generate bodhicitta involve inner cultivations, inner shifts, and that's actually making a big difference. We have by now seen and understood that blaming external things and trying to fix things from the outside only goes so far. Doesn't really solve the entire problem. It could solve one problem but give rise to another. In the case of the inner cultivations, that's not what is happening. That's not what is happening. If at all, it can leave legacies of even more positivity. It's a compassionate focus on other beings rather than on just ourselves. Sometimes we have this reluctance to be thinking of others, fearing that might exclude me, that might leave me out. But that's our misconception. The very moment we think of others, we are doing the thinking with our mind, and we are already included with that. We are already linked to that thinking, and thus we already begin. Rather, we will be the first beneficiary of that benevolence. So this needs to be really taken so seriously, right? Not being so myopic in our thinking, and that knowing that that's not serving even our own interests in the best way. That part needs to be really thought through and come to grips with, and then bolstered through practicing it in the daily life whenever opportunity provides. Then that can really be very, 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 very beneficial, a very big blessing for ourselves. Universal perception of similarity, common humanity, that's what it is based on, right? The cultivation of bodhicitta starts with the cultivation of equanimity. Equanimity, seeing our similarity, seeing our similarities. And even scientific researchers have shown that perception of similarity can go a long way in making a change in how we behave towards others, what kind of a person we become. Although the similarities talked about and done research on are limiting ones, but when we speak of bodhicitta, the similarity that it touches on, that it grounds itself on, is something universal. And that's something always there, irrespective of the changes. We carry that similarity with others all the time, in all situations. And if we could ground our sense of similarity, resemblance on that level, then it can go a big way in really laying the ground for all the rest of the positive thinkings to come. Another way is when we stress positive thinking, that's again, very often people have, positive thinking is meek thinking. Meek thinking, it is losing on oneself, kind of kowtowing to others. But that is not, doesn't need to be. Sometimes people could be naive in thinking of them as this, even including compassion and whatnot, but that's not what it necessarily have to be. It has so much room for creativity and so much room for sensibility and openness. It's a deep recognition of interdependence. This is again very important. Once we see how we are dependent on others, that can really break down the barriers of ourselves and others being so distinctly different. Genuine feeling of universal gratitude, that's what it is drawing the strength from, of our not just dependence, not our connectedness, but even on our dependence, of how, irrespective of what the situations, maybe what others may be doing or thinking, even unbecoming ways, but there always is room to kind of turn it around, to be grateful about, that you could make good of and be grateful about. And if that's the case, there's no need to speak of other situations where people are kind of openly coming out, reaching out and helping. So every time we deal with situations, good or bad, there's always the reason to feel gratitude. Not that that's the best thing to happen, but once it has happened, it still leaves room for it to be turned into something positive. That's the whole teaching about transforming adversities into something positive on the path. It's because there's a possibility there. There's the room there, and thus it is possible. A strong foundation of equanimity, that's, as we will see in the methods of cultivating them, we will see how it is based on equanimity. And a deep root in personal disillusionment with the bondage of afflictions, and it dictates. And that's a good thing to have a basis for. Kind of one is not naively being carried away or allowed to be carried away by our misconceptions, but rather kind of taking charge in seeing what reality actually is, and thus beginning to see something wrong with our taken for granted perspectives. So that's the reason why bodhicitta really matters and make a big difference, because its cultivation depends on the cultivation of all these different aspects of the list. Okay, let's go to the next one. So when we, yes, please. Okay. Yeah, a deep root in personal disillusionment with the bondage of afflictions and its dictates. The first kind of a disillusionment is that we tend to think that the only way I could take care of myself is by only thinking of myself. And that's a total wrong, totally wrong. And that's what the practice of bodhicitta kind of brings to the fore. Another is when we think in a very myopic, self-interest, selfish way, and that's kind of a breeding ground for all of the afflictions. We feel very justified in being angry, hateful, jealous, whatever the situation calls for in our naive, in our usual thinking. We'll feel justified to do that. These are all tools of self-centeredness. I am more important to others. That's why I can use them. And the tools to do that is these afflictions. So one feels more kind of open to and willing to employ these afflictions. So that means nurturing them. When you nurture the tools of problem, one would have more problems. So it doesn't take a stand against the afflictions. Ordinarily, self-centeredness kind of is open to whatever means there may be to achieve one's own goal, and that's how the bondage to afflictions become even stronger, and just thus one succumbs to its dictates. Whereas this shift of how others are more important than oneself happens, then it really brings about this change. So then, many of you who are already familiar with the two methods of cultivating bodhicitta, this is one method called the 7 cause and effect instruction. As many of you are aware, when we call this 7 cause and effect, what do you think is the effect in this? Bodhicitta? It makes sense, right? The first 6 should be the cause and the bodhicitta should be the effect. Do you think so? What is the effect? Okay. Extraordinary resolve. Okay. Why do you leave out bodhicitta then?
With the extraordinary resolve, we are pushed in the direction to generate bodhicitta.
Yeah. So then it becomes cause to bodhicitta. It becomes cause to the bodhicitta. But then why would you call that as effect? Any other option? Pardon? Pardon? Buddha. Buddha would. Okay, then it doesn't become 6, 7 cause and effect. Then it would be 8. Pardon? We still need wisdom. Then Yeah, we will need, but in this 7 cause and effect, what would be the cause and what is the effect? Yes.
I don't know the answer, but in my own thinking, it seems like they can be both.
Which both?
Some of them can be both a cause and an effect.
Uh-huh.
Like, for instance, when you see all sentient beings, if it being our mother, that can be a cause of wishing to repay their kindness. And for instance, when you have heartwarming love, that can be a cause for having great compassion, and then that compassion could lead to more, compassion. If you see everyone, if you have that first one. And so, yeah, I see some of them as being both causes and effects.
Yeah, so they are cause and effect to each other in a sequential way. Right?
But I'm told, yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Any other option? Okay. Any other option? in Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo, he mentions compassion is the result. He holds compassion, great compassion, as the pivoting. You call it pivoting moment, or the pardon? Yeah, pivotal. It is the pivotal. The rest, of course, I mean, the reason may be to emphasize the cultivation of compassion, which from there, then it's almost sure that it will lead to the others. And the ones following people are mainly kind of stressed on to push on until one attains great compassion. And anyway, in Lamrim Chemo, it's I've seen others explaining it, saying Bodhichitta is the natural effect and all the rest are causes, because we are talking of cultivating Bodhichitta, and that should be an end result, of which all the rest could be causes to it. But at the same time, I also affirm what Venerable Tharpa is suggesting, that in a way, they also step by step in a causal sense, in a not so strict causal sense, but in the way you cultivate to build the momentum until you attain Buddhahood, Bodhicitta, they kind of each has a place in relation to the other, and that serves as a cause. But interestingly, in Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo, he calls compassion the result. So the main thing is to push all the way to compassion, and once you have great compassion, naturally it will evolve into exploring what would be the way to do it, who could do it, who should do it, and then if one has taken that upon oneself, then what would it take to do it? Yes.
Volume 5, His Holiness and Venerable Children say the 7 points center around compassion.
Yes.
With the first 4 being the causes of compassion, and the last 2 being the effect of compassion. For this reason, some masters consider the cause and effect instructions to refer to the causes and effects of compassion. Other masters say that the first 6 points are the cause for the 7th point.
Yes. Yes, thank you. So then what Venerable Samdhinla just read brings another aspect to it, saying compassion is the result of the first 4 steps, and the 4 steps are cause of great compassion, and the next 2 are results of great compassion. So compassion becomes the pivotal, in relation to which the first 4 are cause, and the last 2 are result. Anyway, yeah, just okay. We do not have time to go through all of this unless people have questions, right? Yeah, please. And you will have a separate meditation sessions, so it will not make sense to kind of use time in meditating in our teaching sessions. Yes.
With this 7-step cause and effect instruction, where does like overcoming the self-centered thought kind of factor in? Is it kind of woven within all of them, or is there some point where we really need to free our mind of that before we can really make some progress?
I think one before this 7 steps, one has to cultivate equanimity, and their equanimity is in the sense of curbing our tendency to be attached to some and be repulsive of some. So equanimity, kind of leveling the ground. So to a certain extent, that will also affect, not that directly, but indirectly, because we are dealing with the expressions of self-centeredness in the form of attachment or in the form of hatred. So that equanimity gets to the attachment and the hatred part of them, and thus it indirectly kind of mitigates the force of self-centeredness. But then, from the very first, seeing all sentient beings as having been our mother, father, friend, whatever is endearing to us, an object of gratitude, whatnot, we could think of them here, and that gets very strongly about on the self-centeredness, because everyone has that we have benefited from them, and thus if we turn it around, that means there's no point in being self-centered. But then recalling their kindness is even strengthens on it, doubles down on it, in kind of crushing self-centeredness, wishing to repay them, cherishing love, great compassion, all the way down, even becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Yeah, so without spelling it out separately, it's kind of included in all these steps. Yeah, but barely touching it during the first equanimity practice, but the rest it seems to kind of yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next. Yeah, by the way, yeah, could you move it back? Yes. The 4th one is called heartwarming love, and the 5th one is great compassion. Usually we hear of loving kindness, right? Loving kindness among the 4 immeasurables. If loving kindness were to be included here, where would that be? Where would that be? If one were to include loving kindness. Pardon? Number 4? Number 3, number 4, okay. Number 2, yes. Number 5, yes. It will be together with great compassion. That's the reason why it is not mentioned. Because great compassion and loving kindness, it's just a matter of what you are focusing on. If you are focusing on suffering, then you naturally generate a wish for them to be free from suffering. If you are focusing on the same situation, but your attention is on their lacking joy, their lacking happiness, then you would wish them to have more happiness. If you see them happy, you see them to be continuing to be happy. If you see them being bereft of happiness, then you wish them to be happy. That's great compassion, loving kindness. So that's why it is not listed here separately. So that leaves the question, what is then heartwarming love? Right? So that's different than the loving kindness. This heartwarming love is very crucial in determining that one is on the way to generate genuine compassion. And this heartwarming love is what we usually call, it is heartwarming in the sense of a sense of endearment towards others. How after having seen their kindness, whatnot, then we begin to develop a sense of endearment, sense of cherishing others. When we have that, then it is almost natural that when we see them suffering, we would be concerned. When we see them happy and joyful, we will be happy. We will be rejoiced in that. So that's a technical difference there. And this heartwarming love is very crucial. And that's the reason why the steps push on until you reach the fourth one. Because if you leave it out, then there would not be great compassion, let alone great compassion, not even genuine compassion. One will be having biased compassion. So this heartwarming love should also be seen to go to all sentient beings, all throughout. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Yeah. So as I said, though not listed in the 7 instructions, before that one has to develop equanimity, and I'm calling this equanimity of impartiality because in Tibetan, the same equanimity, the same term is used for another type of attitude, and another type of attitude of benevolence. That's why I'm kind of specifying this as equanimity of impartiality, where you train in the evenness of mind. Usually we have this natural reaction of being drawn to someone, being repelled by someone, and we stay with that, and then follow up with our thinking and reaction responses based on that reading or misreading, if you will. And that is not advisable. That is not what would lead us to universal love and compassion, right? Because if we start with a bumpy road, if we start with a bumpy ground, with some rising, some in a dent form, like that of a loving kind of attachment towards some and hatred towards some, then whatever cultivation we do, it would be determined. It will be affected by that kind of uneven level. So that's the reason why this first practice of equanimity is emphasized. And here, equanimity in the sense mainly to cultivate an evenness of mind that enables us to be impartial in the sense that we will not be too attached to someone and too repulsed by someone. We would have a similar kind of a response or attitude to begin with when we relate to neutral beings. Not that that's where we always want to stay at, but that's a very good starting point to then build the structures. Like we have to first level the ground, and then we build multi-story structure. Likewise, these very important following constructions, if you will, structures of kindness, compassion, great resolve, bodhicitta, they need to have a level ground, free from those obstacles in the form of too strong attachment or too strong hatred, like that. So that's the reason why this equanimity practice is very essential. So whenever we have problem in being naturally attached to someone, in being naturally repulsed by someone, we do have that sometimes, irrespective of whether that person is saying the truth or saying something important, beneficial. We don't want to hear that. Right now, right away, we have this reaction of who you think you are, or you have this reaction of kind of an abject rejection of what they say, and even sometimes a full-blown attitude of hatred or dislike, like that. So that's something to be worked on in the first place, to kind of level the ground, to eventually develop our mind into these marvelous attitudes of universal love and compassion, etc. This is very crucial. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah, so it says the need for that is in its absence, our mind will be prone to strong. We would just allow that natural reaction of hatred and attachment to people without this kind of awareness that this is what is happening, and this needs to be worked on by cultivating equanimity, which is workable, which is something we can do. We could be realistic to what people mean to us, how they care or not care about us. But on our part, we do not have to naturally, we do not have to reactively respond in that way. We have to take charge of our own emotion, because if we allow others to dictate our reactions, then we would be playing in their hands. We would be placing remote control in their hands. So that's very crucial in being aware of this kind of a bumpy start happening and what needs to be done. We could still respond to the situation in a matter-of-fact way, etc., but not necessarily by giving into these emotional baggages, emotional imbalances, because that will only be detrimental to us, both in terms of immediate feeling as well as in terms of what kind of actions we take and things we do under the force of afflictions. They are, to start with, they may look like the right choice, but once you give them the charge, give in to them, the result is unpredictable. One is now on a ride determined by these afflictions. In its absence, we will have difficulty generating true compassion. Yes, the compassion will also be kind of unleveled, on that kind of unleveled ground. Instead, we will not be able to generate true or universal compassion, because to some we will still be reserving such negative reactions, and on that basis, there's no way compassion can be generated. And then, yes, compassion, if at all, will be partial, it will be biased, and it will not be stable, as we say, because if the ground shifts, the structures on it also shifts. We see that during earthquakes. So it will be shifting. It will be compassion towards someone one day, but not on the other day. It could be stuck 180-degree shift the next day, because it's all based on not who they are, but what they mean to me. It's again an extension of self-centeredness. But when we generate it in the genuine sense that covers every sentient being, then we see how that makes a big difference. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah, and these are the cultivations to help us in generating, in curbing our negative, in curbing our imbalanced reaction. People will differ in how they react to situations, what afflictions they are more prone to, and based on that, they need to work on them. But in terms of a general approach, this is more like a tool for analytic meditation, leading to cultivation of impartiality. So in such kind of meditation, one does the analysis and then kind of come to a sense of conviction. Yes, that's really the case. Kind of then hold it. So kind of alternating, hold it without any further mental analysis, and then move on to the next analysis point. And then again, once you reach conviction, you hold on to that. That's how you kind of almost like impinge the force of that conviction on the mind stream. And then as we do that on a regular basis, one could begin to see a shift in how one responds or reacts to situations. So these are something that needs to be kind of visited regularly. Only on a regular basis we can then begin to see a change. Of course, first we have to understand at the intellectual level, but eventually the most crucial thing is to then internalize it. And doing that is by way of alternating analytical meditation and placement meditation or concentration meditation. So these are the points that one could think of and see if they speak true to you. Our categorization of people as friends, enemies, it's unstable, right? It keeps changing. Considering the changeability of relationships, discriminating based on these categories is unsuitable. So accepting that, yes, relationships are, everyone has varying relationships, and they could also change. Based on that, one is not supposed to then invest too much on them. Allowing to be angry towards some and attached to some is kind of putting in a big emotional investment in something that's totally shaky and unstable. We would not do that, not necessarily usually. If it comes to investing our money in somewhere, we wouldn't do that. If the market is too shaky, we want to take money out. When it looks like somewhat stable, then we want to put it. So is the case here. The third one is considering the common aspiration that we all share, cultivating a sense of equanimity, impartiality towards all of them is more realistic and sensible. And it's more practical and more beneficial as well. Because problems could be solved on the basis of having this evenness of mind to begin with, and not allowing any kind of a bias, prejudice to kind of determine the course of action. And from a Buddhist perspective, taking rebirth into consideration, there is no one who has not been our near and dear ones. Likewise, there has not been any who has not been our enemies at one point or the other. So being so fixed on who to react in what way is totally unrealistic and also not beneficial. And then on top of that, see the faults of attachment, hostility, apathy, to help us to release these emotions and to cultivate a state of emotional balance towards all beings. Seeing the drawbacks of these afflictions is the first and foremost way to turn our attention away from them. And in this regard, being very attached to someone, being very angry kind of to someone, we can see how they breed unbecoming responses from us, and very much misinformed reactions, misinformed perception of others, relationships. The last one, even the enemies, they provide us with an opportunity to test our inner strength and the power of our compassion in a way that even spiritual teachers cannot. They are very unique. Everything is very unique in their own right, and thus they have unique capabilities. And this is one with enemies. Enemies are those who harbor hostility towards you. It's because of this sense of hostility in them that we can so assuredly confidently call them as our enemy. Because of that, we are now challenged with how strong we are in our spiritual practice for our own benefit. They kind of really push the button. Very often they are not mistaken in getting the right button. Others can get it wrong, but enemies don't get. And they are so valuable in really pointing to us where what is that? Achilles heel is. Achilles heel. Where is our push button? If we have it or not. If we so, how strong is it? They really kind of unmistakably point it to us. Others very often get wrong. In that respect, they are so valuable. Not that we have to go about cultivating animosity, but whatever we have is valuable in their own respective way. Yeah. So let's see what's next. Yes. Let me ask you, when we generate equanimity, so when we generate love, what does the attitude of love takes the form of? When we generate love towards others, what does the attitude look like? Wishing them to be free from suffering, right? Oh, sorry, loving kindness. Oh, for compassion, for love, yeah. And what about compassion? The same way, I accept it is focusing on suffering. What about equanimity? What do we feel when we generate equanimity towards someone? Equanimity in this sense. We will keep ourselves from being pulled into attachment or hatred, right? 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 We will try to keep our mind free from attachment or hostility. That would be cultivating equanimity towards others. What about this one? May all sentient beings abide in equanimity. Is this equanimity practice? We are saying may they be free of the bias. But that means you are not practicing equanimity yourself. Why do you think it's the case here? Yes.
Pali Canon, it is the first, where it's you are equanimous. But in the Mahayana, it's wishing others to have that.
Not necessarily. Even in the Mahayana sadhanas, it starts with equanimity in the same spirit, but starts first. But also we will see Mahayana practices starting with loving kind, other than equanimity left. But in both of these cases, it reads like this: May all they be free from attachment and hatred. Is that equanimity? You are not cultivating equanimity. Pardon?
All sentient beings includes ourselves, doesn't it? If we're wishing all sentient beings except ourselves, then we have to put that caveat. But if you're saying all sentient beings, it includes ourselves.
Okay, then that would apply for all the rest also. We're all sentient beings. Yes.
I have a bit of a qualm about, because for immeasurables, like the immeasurable compassion is not equivalent to great compassion, is it?
It is not.
Yeah, but you were saying that inside great compassion includes loving kindness, immeasurable loving kindness.
In great compassion, it includes. In them, great compassion doesn't come under them. Oh yeah, to have great compassion, all of this will be included in it. But when you have immeasurables, loving kindness or compassion, it doesn't necessarily have to be great compassion. Yeah. Did you?
Having gone through the first three where you're wishing all beings to
Yeah.
be happy and free from suffering and to have joy, that's the practice of equanimity, because you're wishing that for all beings and indiscriminately. And in the end, so that's cultivating it within yourself. And then the last one, you're wishing them to have that same indiscriminate attitude. So the first three, you could say, is practicing equanimity because you're wishing all beings without exception indiscriminately to have happiness and be free of suffering.
Okay. That's another take. Interesting. I have another take. I'm saying, may all sentient beings be happy, mainly geared towards others. But definitely it could include oneself also. May all sentient beings be happy and have the happiness and causes. May all be free from suffering in its causes. May all be not separated from sorrowless bliss. How would that happen? Only when they abide in equanimity. How would that start to happen? Only when they happen to abide in equanimity. Like that. Not necessarily oneself cultivating equanimity, but using the notion of equanimity as a method to have those wishes fulfilled. And then in the case of places where it is the reverse, but in the same tone, how will we then understand it? It's also saying that first they have to get rid of the bumpy level. Once they have gotten rid of that, then there is the possibility of them generating, of having happiness or freeing from suffering as I wish them to be. But first, they have to meet the condition of being freed from these bumps. Yes.
Geshe, from the teaching from Venerable Sangye Kadro, I remember that for the first two, for the love and compassion, we are actually generating a compassion that to free all the sentient beings, not from the mundane level, but ultimately they are free from all suffering in the cyclic existence. And then, but the third, some of the texts that I read from the sadhana, they say that from upper rebirth. But upper rebirth are referring to Sukhavati, or are they referring to like the upper rebirth in the samsara?
Usually we speak of sorrowless bliss as nirvana, the state of nirvana. So it's not just upper rebirth. But maybe if upper rebirth is included, it's not the ultimate aim, but rather through the means of upper rebirth, may they then eventually attain the sorrowless bliss of nirvana and the full attainment. So as we earlier spoke of how the attitude of Bodhichitta includes all other lesser ways of helping sentient beings. They are not excluded. And likewise, in wishing them to have the sorrowless bliss, that would definitely include, irrespective of whether it is explicitly mentioned or not, it would include means of doing that, means of happening that. And one very essential would be to keep on regaining better human birth, better higher rebirth. Yeah, I guess we will stop here. Yeah, we haven't gone so far. I mean, that's not the problem. That's not the issue, right? But okay, I think that's fine. Yes.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Iram Guru Ramna Mandalakam Niryatayami.
You do this very soon. Attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forever.